The Lunaverse by by-Pdan. Episode 19, A Chance Encounter by Hindi983 and insertauthor here. Chapter 5 by insertauthor here. The two combatants stared at each other for a good long while, neither one daring to make the first move. Tali's head was lowered just enough that Horn's tip was pointing at Zecora's face, her eyes scanning about for any sign of attack. The zebra, on the other hoof, was like a stone wall, rigid and unmoving in the wind. And at the very opposite end of us all was Spike, who had decided to busy himself with chewing the bars of his old natural cage. Alas, even teeth capable of grinding gemstones were not enough to overcome the enchantment responsible for his predicament. The muscles in Twilight's legs tightened, her body buckling to the ground in preparation to strike. Zecora's right hoof pawed to the earth, her poise remaining as unmoving as ever, the sun continuing its journey down the horizon, bathing the entire forest in a veil of hazy light and twisted shadows. The phoenix cooed from its perch, its eyes never once leaving the battlefield. The only sound either equine could hear was the rustling of leaves in the wind, branches scraping against each other like a bow against a cello strings. It was right as the sounds reached an unintentional adagio that Twilight's horn lit up like a heart-warming eve tree. A small ball of purple energy collected itself at the sharpened tip of the exposed bone, its power bending in and around of itself like the tides into a whirlpool. Zecora raised an eyebrow, but otherwise made no effort to step aside. The bolt fired. Perfect! Twilight thought to herself as the projectile sped towards its target. Her eyes closed already in triumph. A knockout spell won't hurt her too much, but it should leave her unconscious for the rest of the trip back to Canterlot. With both of Corona's minions in custody, Princess Luna should have no trouble sending her back into the sun. My crimes will be forgiven, and Trixie will finally see how much I... That was as far as her mind got, before she heard a small popping sound, not unlike a balloon meeting its end at the tip of a sewing needle. Her eyes widened as she saw what remained of the projectile twinkle against either rock. As for Zecora, she had simply vanished. Twilight's jaw dropped. What? But that's impossible! Zebras don't have horns! There's no way they can wake out! Many secrets of magic you indeed know. A small tremor of fear spread through Twilight's body. But your common sense is far too low. The voice seemed to come from every direction at once. Every tree brand, bush, and blade of grass whistled those words, assaulting Twilight's senses not unlike a fireworks display to a newborn foal. Her heart skipped a beat or two as she frantically spun about, desperate to find something she could use to orient herself. Sow yourself, and come out and face me, pony to pony! I am not a pony, Miss Twilight, and I most enjoy watching your plight. For a pony so young and rash, your fantasies fade in a flash. We don't need to do this, Zecora, Twilight grimaced. I just need to take Spike to Princess Luna, that's all. And do you think I would allow such a thing? A small laugh echoed through the canopy, accompanied by a rustling of leaves. Do you not know the wrath she would bring? She abandoned her sister, banished her away. Corona betrayed us! Twilight's head began to ache. Princess Luna saved us from her tyranny. How can you support a monster like that? Because it is the sun that must rule the day. That makes no sense. Twilight felt like her entire skull was about to explode. And what about Spike? He's just a baby. Why would the Tyrant Sun want him? He was my companion, my student and friend. But the true queen he continues to offend. He refused her to serve her as rightfully should, and punishes him for his insolent mood. But he is a servant, and so she shall be until Equestria's throne alone should see. Since Twilight groaned, I will... That was when the buildup finally released. The energy Twilight had been pouring her into her horn exploded in a vast shield of purple energy, pushing outwards from her until it covered 30 yards in any direction. Spike shuddered as the magic poured over him, but there was no effect. He just moved on like he was passing through air. The same, however, could not be said for a rather large equine-shaped object. The moment the spell made contact with the hiding Zecora, She was sent tumbling all the way back down to the ground, landing in a black and white heap on the forest floor. After a few seconds, the magic dissipated, leaving an exhausted Twilight, a surprised Spike, and a flustered Zecora somewhere in the woods. The only sound that could be heard in any direction was that of the phoenix landing back on its perch, cooing it relieved at not being plastered into a mountainside somewhere. Spike brought his head up to the bramble bars. What happened? A seal spell. Something my brother taught me. Twilight took in a gulp of air, then exhaled. It's a lot easier contracting than it is pushing it out. Then where's Z? Twilight's eyes narrowed, her ears rotating forward. In the distance, she could make out the faint sound of branches being snapped, hooves pounding against the dirt, and the heavy snorts of physical exertion. The alicorn's horn, front of toe began pawing away at the ground, her hind legs buckling as he prepared for the oncoming strike. Finally, from the briars and the brambles and the bushes where a rabbit couldn't go, emerged Zecora. Despite the incredible distance he must have been flung, she showed no sign of injury, nor any intention of her ceasing her charge. The zebra's speed only increased as she laid eyes on her waiting opponent and helpless target. Within moments, she was so close she could feel the breath coming from Twilight's nostrils. At least, that's what she would have felt had Twilight been standing there. Zecora gradually backpedaled, managing to stop herself just short of Spike's cage. The moment her mental facilities had managed to reorient themselves, she began to cast her head from side to side, frantically searching for her enemy. It was a fruitless endeavor. There was no bushes trampled, treetops parted, or grass blades displaced, barring those from earlier in the struggle. Wherever Sparkle had gone, she had left only a few tingling specks of light to mark her passing. That was when Zecora felt a tingling sensation. A purple glow popped into existence around the zebra, followed by the strike one's hooves losing contact with the ground. Get over here! She let out a brief yelp. It would later be debated if it was in shock of or resignation of her fate, as the telekinetic field pulled her towards her master. To be precise, it pulled her towards a very large tree that happened to be sitting between the zebra and Twilight. Zecora slanted the old grove woods side first, grunting in pain as the magic subsided as he collapsed to the ground. No, this is normal Twilight. This is not minor variation Twilight. Well, that was easy, Twilight said as he walked out from behind her barrier tree. I was more into studying the theories and philosophies of magic, but it never hurts to know how to hold your ground in a fight. Now, let's get ready to meet Princess Luna. Zecora crumbled and turned her eyes upward. You are quite skilled, my little pony, but the princess you serve is quite the phony. Twilight's eyes narrowed. No more of this. I'm tired, hungry, cold, and almost got killed by vines. The three of us are going to Canterlot. I will turn you and Spike over to Princess Luna. With both of Corona's dragons and her most loyal servant locked away, we see you have no choice but to clear the charges against me. You are quite delusional, if that is what you believe, Zecora grumbled. How can you turn in somepony that you cannot see? The zebra quickly raised and stamped her right hoof against the ground. There was the sound of something bursting upon impact, followed by an explosive sound of smoke that obscured every inch of the area. Twilight coughed as the dark cloud filled her lungs and burned her eyes, and was barely even able to stumble out of the area effect. She only knew of her success when she felt her left hind leg bump into Spike's cage. When the smoke disappeared, the zebra was gone. Twilight let out a few more coughs, once there were enough to dislodge the last remnants of smoke from her body. Despite the lingering pain in her retinas, she smirked. Really? You're going with that trick again? I admit the advantage belongs to you. The zebra's voice echoed from one tree to the next, seemingly without any point of origin. But do not think all I've done I can do. Immense power and knowledge you do possess, but talent alone cannot guarantee success. Twilight rolled her eyes, doing her best to ignore the lingering fear in her heart, a slight pulling sensation in her back half. Of course it won't. Talent is thus somepony's innate affinity towards a particular subject or field. It's useless without diligent study and plenty of practice. Her horn began to glow for a few seconds, which was followed by a quick burst of light as she teleported from the next cage to a spot a few feet away. Do you think any unicorn can teleport? Of course not. It's one of the most difficult spells any pony can master. Not even the vaunted element of magic knows how to do it. That's just the tip of the... That was when Twilight felt something very big, very hammy slamming into the side of her head. She barely had time to wince before being propelled sideways several yards from the impact of Zecora's staff. Even after inertia had finally stopped carrying her ever forward, Twilight's world was a spinning vortex of colors and sounds. The offending stick itself sat on the ground for a few moments before its master leaped back into the earth. "Listen, a silly unicorn like you must learn is that a lack of focus is your greatest concern." Twilight began to struggle back to her host. A task is made no easier by how her head was still spinning. She barely balanced herself on all fours. We saw a brown phial tumble to the ground and explode barely 6 inches away, releasing a cloud of green fumes. Unlike the smoke that uncovers Zecora's escape, however, these particular vapors zeroed in on Twilight's respiratory system, filling her lungs and causing the unicorn to gag and choke. Her mind struggled to turn its focus into any spell she could use to escape. But the pain was so intense that it was impossible to form enough of a coherent thought for any magic to be used. There was, however, one thing she could make out, though. Zecora's laugh. "Ha ha 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 ha! You and Trixie share one thing, an ego fit for a king." At the sound of that name, Twilight's nostrils involuntarily flared. Her eyes burned as her vision blurred and twisted about, until she was certain not one side of the planet was right side up. "We're nothing alike! Trixie is a fraud! No pony with her ineptitude could have gained the element of... The elements were not awarded by simple skill." Zecora's voice was further away. Twilight's head turned instinctively to the treetops. "They belong to only those with a strong will. Thousands of years past, they were within the sister's grasp. Now they have found new bearers to call their oaths, and will not just give up the ghosts." By now, the gas had dissipated enough for Twilight to get at least some bearing, even if she couldn't see the infernal zebra. "You sound like you're happy that this happened. Aren't you supposed to, help your boss burn Equestria to the ground and all that?" "Such lies keep your foes in line, or Luna's reign would be in decline. The true queen of Equestria shall retake her throne, and the elements again will be her own." Twilight bristled. She seemed to have struck a nerve. "Now return that dragon, and we shall forget your folly. Do not, and they shall never find your body." Twilight backpedaled a few steps. Seeking the last of the disorientation out of her skull, she did so. It was now obvious that Zecora's face was coming from above. But what wasn't obvious was where. The trees were so thick in this part of the woods that the branches practically overlapped into a net of foliage. "What do you even want, Spike? He's a baby dragon, not some unstoppable killing machine. Why are you so set on getting him back?" "He once provided a valuable service to our queen, although I admit his record is far from clean. With her magic, she can make him change into a monster of infinite rage. And when the queen is feeling stressed, into the lava she..." Twilight's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" "A dragon scarcely resists the heat, so for relief, here's what she seeks." "You mean she dumps him into lava whenever she's feeling a little overworked?" Twilight felt something in her chest. She wasn't quite sure what it was, and would not know for some time after, but it was so terrible and comforting at the same time. "That's monstrous! What kind of pony would do something like that to a child?" No wonder he was trying to. "He is my servant, even if he does not believe it so." Zecora's voice deepened. "And back to our master's lair he must go. He shall find no peace in Canterlot. Do you think Luna would thus stop her plot?" Twilight closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Zecora! I don't know why you're so obsessed with destroying pony kind, but Luna is not plotting to keep Equestria enslaved. She is a fair ruler, and whatever Spike might be an accomplice in, she will not allow a child to be tortured or killed just to satisfy some scheme that only exists in your sun-warper-singing head. How you zebras can live yourselves while praying to the most evil pony to ever exist, just..." Twilight had exactly 3 seconds to regret her desistance, before a black and white mass slammed into her with the force of a rolling boulder. The blow was enough to send Twilight spinning and bouncing backwards, finally coming to rest against a large boulder. Despite the pain, she forced her eyes open and turned, just in time for Zecora to buck her right in the side against a rock. The strike was accompanied by the sound of something breaking, and followed by the unicorn coughing up blood and collapsing in a heap. The last thing she saw before slipping into semi-unconsciousness was the zebra staring down at her, eyes burning red, steam bellowing from her nostrils, made frazzled and split. "You had a chance to aid our noble cause," Zecora shouted. "Now suffer the fate of a mere clod!" The zebra looked at her host, Twilight's body tense as much as it could. "Z! Stop!" Zecora froze in midair, his spine darted between her and the downed Twilight. She turned to the empty cage, lowered herself back to normal standing position. Finally returned to her shocked gaze to the escaped prisoner. Once he was certain he wasn't going to be thrown back into a cage or box, Spike continued. "She's had enough, Z. There's no way she can get me back to Canterlot now. Don't you think she's had enough?" Zecora tilted her head. "Perhaps I was too eager to teach her a lesson. My anger and close-mindedness is hard to lessen. But she is still our enemy and must be stopped. If not, she can make sure our teams are blocked." "That's exactly the point!" Spike shook his head in a mixture of frustration and exhaustion. "Why are we doing this? Don't you see that this queen of yours is nuts? She wants sunny days that last a week just so every pony can see how pretty her son is. She wants every single thing on the earth kissing the ground while she walks on it just because she controls a big ball in the sky. All these monsters and things she's recruiting? Can you really say you're okay with this?" Zecora's eyes closed slightly, but not enough to hide her pupils turning away from the dragon. "Come on, Z. We could go back to the way things used to be. Just the two of us together. A zebra and her dragon, exploring the world and fighting our way through it. No mad dictators throwing me into lava pits or making you beat up ponies. Please." The first answer was silence, which was broken by rustling grass in the wind. The second was a mournful sigh from Zecora. The third was the word from her mouth. "No." Spike sighed. "Why? But why?" "There's more than play than you can understand, my little friend. The Tyrant Sun is a pony we must not offend. Her rule must be made absolute, so that Luna may refute. She is indeed reckless in her displays of power. The consequences shall be quite dour." The dragon shook his head, both in disbelief and terror at what was happening next. But you can let me go, right? I'm no use to any pony." "You know too much, my little Spike." Zecora slammed a hoof on the ground, creating a cloud of black smoke. When it cleared, a spiral of yellow liquid was sitting in her raised down hoof. "Now, it is time we took up." Her ride dropped away, however. She saw purple forelegs wrap themselves around the dragon, before both they and Spike, plus the pony's legs attached to, disappeared in a blinding purple light. No pony truly knows what happens when a unicorn teleports. The methods and techniques are well understood. You channel magic until you have enough to transmit yourself to whatever location you have in mind. For those who have shown any ability to perform these spells, there are countless training courses relating to how to focus your energy, how not to exhaust yourself, most importantly of all, how not to end up with your body on both sides of a wall, or bursting out of another pony. There was also something about never using the spell when there was a good chance of lightning, but no pony would be foolish enough to try and perform such a difficult trip under those circumstances. So yes, ponies knew how you teleport. The mystery, though, was what happened to your physical form during the process. The level of concentration required for phasing even 10 meters was so intense that most ponies had to keep their eyes firmly closed, and Twilight was thinking considerably farther. Not to mention her hose were wrapped around a non-pony, and she was not in the best shape for such a trip. Stupid, stupid, stupid! I could have done. She opened her eyes. Wait, I made it! Sure enough, Twilight was now in the middle of a grassy field, with only a dirt path to break up the monotony on all sides. In the distance, she could make out Trottingham, home of some of the best medical care outside of Canterlot. She had studied plenty of medical textbooks, of course, but she wasn't crazy enough to perform surgery on her own body. especially when just concentrating long enough to sustain any magic was a pain. Surmising that she had survived winning another day, the mare slowly rolled onto her belly and pushed on with all four hooves. As she did so, little puffs of pain ran up and down her joints. For long, the ordeal was too much. Twilight let out a gasp and collapsed, stopping just short of the ground, only because of a pair of tiny claws intercepting her barrel. Claws? Twilight looked down as Spike looked up. Their eyes finally met. The dragon's body was covered in scorch marks, but he was otherwise uninjured. Was this a far cry better than what the unicorn could claim? Through her own pain, Twilight sighed. Spike, are you okay? I'm sorry about the burns. I knew that teleporting while holding someone could be bad if you didn't adjust for their presence, but... It's fine, Twilight, Spike said. Dragons are fireproof. Besides, I got really thick scales. How do you think I survived all those trips into the lava? There was a brief moment of silence, followed by a forced giggle from both parties. I see your point, Twilight groaned. But how did I get out of the cage? Spike laughed. Well, I saw you getting ready to teleport when you were up against my cage. Part of your tail slipped in and, well, I just grabbed it and popped out with you. I wanted to escape, but then I saw what happened and... Twilight sighed and opened her mouth. One pause as another wave of agony poured through her veins and refused to let go. Spike's grip tightened as more of Twilight's weight pushed against his little arms. What's wrong? Your friend broke a few, he grimaced. Things, Spike gasped. I'm so sorry! I never thought she'd... The dragon stopped, grabbed his right arm, and looked at his spot on the ground. There was not much of a point in lying now. Actually, I knew she was going to do this. She'd do anything for that crazy alicorn. I'm never going to get my friend back. And now I guess I'm going to be her sister's prisoner too. In spite of the pain still coursing through her equine form, Twilight managed to let out a sigh and seat herself on her hindquarters. The dragon she had thought for so hard was standing in front of her, too broken by the day's events to effect another escape. His cute little head was filled to the brim with valuable information on Corona's activities. And even though he wasn't her top general or anything, it was still valuable enough for her to use as leverage. She just needed to take him to Canterlot, turn him in, and finally be a free mare again. Alas, there was something else digging at her core. Something she had been trying to deny ever since this whole mess started. Spike, what do you want to do? Dragon's eyes widened in surprise. Huh? Twilight sighed. All this time, I've been thinking about what I wanted. When I looked at you, I saw my opportunity to save myself. What was more than that? I wanted to prove I was a hero, every bit as good as the world thinks Lunamoon is. She shook her head. This was getting harder and harder to admit. The truth is, I'm not. I really am a crazy mare that thought kidnapping a child would be the best way to make things right. There really isn't anything I can do or say at this point to justify that. After hearing what Corona was doing, I'm sorry you lost your friend to her, Spike. I admit I don't know the first thing about friendship, but I couldn't imagine how you feel right now. Spike shrugged. Yeah, you're right. Personally, Twilight decided to ignore the half-insult. You never answered my question. What do you want to do, Spike? The dragon was quiet for a moment. Letting go of the pony, who thankfully recovered enough to remain standing, he sat himself on a small rock along the path. Don't really know. I've had my fill of ponies for a while, especially alicorns. Sea's obviously not an option anymore. Can't really go anywhere in Questry without somebody wanting to throw me in jail. I just wish somebody would give me a hint or... The tender moment of existentialism was interrupted by a thunderous roar from the heavens above. Both pony and dragon turned upwards in anticipation of a counterattack from Corona, but instead saw something far more terrifying. A flying dragon soared overhead, the very clouds buckling and crumbling against the heavy beats of their wings and fiery breath. A flight of dragons soaring through the burdened sky. Flight of dragons going through my mind. I want to know where they are going. What? You guys never seen Flight of Dragons? If you guys had actually gotten that joke of Flight of Dragons and that song, come see me in the comments. I think we would get along great. That song, freaking awesome. No, the movie is awesome. Twilight could feel her heart shivering and bladder threatening to quit. But Spike's eyes were now the size of dinner plates. That's the Great Dragon Migration! I know, shouted Twilight. It's weird, though. There's supposed to be another one for another year or so. Then again, ponies don't know a lot about dragons. Maybe that is what I should do, Spike said. His voice tinged with excitement. I've never been around dragons before. I can learn from them, find out who I am and what I should do. Why, I can feel Mother Nature taking over even as we... There was a thud, followed immediately by the ground shaking. Twilight's Spike spun around to find a massive silver dragon staring at the two, although his eyes seemed to shift more towards the quivering mass of purple scales. Alright, a metallic dragon, now we're getting somewhere! The beast did not much utter a word, holding over its tail and motioned his head towards it. Looks like it really wants to give you a ride, Spike, said Twilight. Go on. Really? The dragon gulped as he turned back to Twilight. But you look pretty hurt. Shouldn't I help you first? Twilight shook her head. No, Spike, I'll be fine. I've made it this long on my own, and besides, I know a couple of doctors here. I'll be fixed up in record time. She motioned her head towards the dragon. This, however, is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. You can learn so much about who you are and where you're from. In all honesty, I kind of envy you. Spike opened his mouth to retort, but the impatient roar of the waiting dragon brought an end to such protestations. With a final smile and thanks, he climbed onto the silver tail. The massive beast was in the air within moments, Twilight barely managing to remain upright against the velocity of its wing power. The carrier was just another spot in the fight a few seconds later. She waited until she was certain the dragon wasn't coming back, before collapsing in a heap. Spike didn't need to see her wailing and angry, especially after what had happened a few minutes prior. After an entire day of pursuing her prey, being pushed back, fighting for her future, she had nothing to show for it but some busted bones. A departing dragon is a very harsh truce. The last thing that seemed to go through her mind as she reached the Tryham Hospital was a simple, but it was also the end of her existence. It was all my fault. I feel a little conflicted by the story, if we're to be honest. When I first read this, I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the other Lunaverse stories. Let me rephrase that by saying that does not mean I hate it, nor do I think it's the worst episode of the series. No. Or a bad fanfic. Good golly, is it not a bad fanfic? I mean, have you seen this show? Have you seen the other pieces of crap we have sat through the past almost 2 years now? If this was the worst thing I ever had to have read, I would have been trying to create a most wanted list of bad people that I've had to read. On its own, it's pretty dang enjoyable, really. It's great. The comedy by both on Hindy's side and Insert Author's here side is great. Insert Author here shows off what he can really do as a writer. Great comedy, fast reflexes, some really great metaphors, and some well-defined motions. I mean, I can feel the cracking of Twilight's hooves, the air, the whole entire scenario, and the quick jabs and jokes that just flew out really helped set the mood. It also helped further explore Twilight's character as to why she is doing this, why she is like this, and how come she is not evil in the Lunaverse. This also gives us exploration on Spike's relationship with Zecora, and also gives us more depth into how the world works. Also gives us a chance to see a couple of metallic dragons, which is always cool because metallic dragons are awesome. So, in fact, as a standalone story, it is pretty dang awesome. And it's actually pretty good and fun. But after a few minutes of thinking, and on my second read-through, I found myself enjoying it a lot more. I think I realized what my biggest problem was. Other than Menses of Corona, it just didn't have a feel of a Lunaverse story to me. Really, besides talking about Corona, I could have easily turned this into, say, Twilight going after a runaway Spike, as Spike is captured by a mad Zecora with just a few changes of the words. And I think I know why. It came to me as I was thinking of this review. There's no other members of the Lunaverse cast. This is just Twilight comes in, finds Spike, they go off on an adventure, they bond, boom, Spike goes home, goes with the dragons. And while this is okay for a short story in my opinion, I feel like it missed an opportunity without any member of the Lunaverse cast to appreciate this development. I would have loved it if, say, maybe Carrot Top or Ditsy were to show up and see this fight, or somehow come to an understanding for this fight. This would also allow the Lunaverse side of things for the Lunaverse 6 to get an understanding for some of Zecora's actions and who Spike is, and maybe even open up the doorway to allow for them to fully understand why Twilight is doing what she did. This could really help Twilight's case, and even put some more members of the Lunaverse side of things onto Twilight's side. Like say, Carrot Top understanding, okay, this is why Twilight's doing this. Guys, really, I think I know why. Or, Zecora seemed a little off in how she wanted to represent her master. I don't know why, it just feels unique. Like maybe she actually believed that the Corona was good. Really? You think Corona could ever be changed? That type of thing. Allow us to explore that. And I think without the Lunaverse 6, we lost our way of actually connecting this to the greater Lunaverse. And not give us a chance to explore the L6 like we want to. On the other side of things, this story is really great. As a Lunaverse story, it feels off. It feels more like this should have been a side story to the Lunaverse rather than a main episode. I'm not going to say I know why they picked it as a main episode, but I feel like this was worked better as a more side adventure. Then again, I really, really wish the Elements of Insanity was an episode. There are 2 open episode slots. Guess which side story is going to get an episode read? Hey, it's my show. I get to decide what I want. But anyway, I'm off topic. I think if you were to ignore the fact that the Lunaverse 6 never show up in this story, it just focuses on a story about Twilight trying to deal with her own issues and Spike having to deal with his own torture and all that, I think you would see it for what it is. A really dang good story and an excellent tale being told and a fun little adventure. Well, that was one down for our little Lunaverse episode. Join us tomorrow for Come on, Raindrops, let's go! Fine, but I swear, if this little festival of yours is all it hopes to be, look, it's got some of the best bands in all of Equestria, and Final Scratch is going to show up. Alright, sure, but, hey, Lyra? Yeah? What is that little thing hopping around us? Oh, it's a jackalope. I think it wants something. Next time on the Lunaverse, the Jackalope Valley Festival. It'll sure to be a hopping good time.